Time to talk Minnesota Vikings, and just like we did a year ago, it's Drew Dinsick, Whale Capper, and myself dissecting a team that maybe overachieved in 2022 and underachieved last year. How are you doing, Drew?
Oh, I'm well. Excited to talk a little football. Put the NBA to bed.
Yeah.
Thankfully, last night it's over, and yeah, there now I can just enjoy tennis this summer, and get ready for football. And this is a perfect launching pad because there are some teams with huge bands, uncertainty bands, and then there's the Minnesota Vikings who kind of stand alone this year, in my opinion, in terms of just what are you going to get. The handicap starts and ends with the quarterback position. I don't think there's certainty there yet, the NFC North looks like the most competitive and most interesting division in football. I'm watching a lot of NFC North football this year, so this is a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the NFC North. I think it's going to get really competitive. I mean, for a little while it was Green Bay and nobody. Then it was Detroit. Now Green Bay's young. We're talking about Minnesota. And you're right, basketball, hockey is almost over. So it's time to really get into the football. Hopefully I didn't lose Drew for a second there. Hopefully we get Drew back real quick. I will say, while we're trying to get Drew back, that talk a little bit about the stat sheet last year. Here he comes. Oh, I lost you just for a second there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
My all right.
Error.
Well, you're back, and just in time to say that last year didn't go that well. In fact, the key stat that I didn't like was the fact that they allowed 7 out of every 10 passes to be completed. Maybe it's year 2 with their defensive coordinator, and a few free agency moves. How would you assess their moves in terms of free agency?
Well, the most important thing for the Minnesota Vikings offseason was re-signing Justin Jefferson, in my opinion. And then just kind of like last year with the Ravens, like their most important move was retaining Lamar Jackson. I think Justin Jefferson is their most important player, and getting him back and locked in long term, I think is pretty massive. The kind of other key, second question is, well, your quarterback who kind of stewarded the franchise for the last 4 years has moved on after tearing his Achilles last year. And what's the succession plan? What's the issue? What's the vision here? They go out and they get Sam Darnold in free agency, who's was pretty obviously a Band-Aid and or just a placeholder while they evaluated quarterback pretty aggressively in the draft. And we'll get to their draft in a little bit more detail, obviously, but they swing for quarterback of the future in JJ McCarthy in round 1 of the draft. And now they've got a development project on their hands. And so I think, the two kind of most important things for franchise building were figure out what you want to do at quarterback and bring back your most important player. And they did both of those things, or at least we know they did one of those things, and they're trying to do number 2. So excited to see it play out. And I think ultimately, if you're going to hold anything against them for the offseason, it wasn't necessarily what they did. It's what everybody else in their division did. Mm-hmm. That you had basically everyone else there competing with a playoff spot in the NFC North got even better than you did in terms of what they were able to, procure in the draft and, or, where they went in free agency to try to, kind of fortify, a building, playoff success for both Green Bay and Detroit. So, I mean, I like, it's an arms race in the NFC North, as we're kind of alluding to. And I think ultimately their approach to the, free agency and the draft was fine in terms of team building vision. They took a lot of swings on some non-obvious names in the defensive side of the equation. And, if you think, hey, we know what we have in Brian Flores, we know this guy can get, more out of the players and the true talent level, then let's go and get guys who are a little under the radar and see what he can achieve with that. And it's a fun experiment. And then, put all their chips on the table that JJ McCarthy is going to be their quarterback of the future, because they'll have another swing next year, presumably, if they don't ultimately take off this year, you would assume. But the quarterback class isn't nearly as good by all accounts, and so this was really their chance for this 5-year window for Justin Jefferson's prime to get a developmental quarterback, and we'll find out if JJ McCarthy is the guy or not.
One other player I want to mention before we get to the draft, and that's this team ran for 91 yards per carry last year and put it all on Cousins and then the backup quarterbacks to throw them to more wins than they actually got. So now they add Aaron Jones. What do you think he brings to the table?
Well, I think in a vacuum, you have to assume that this is a massive upgrade over Madison. Madison was just kind of a dud. And they kind of built their team under the auspice of running backs don't matter, and we can pick up anyone and plug them into our system and they'll succeed, and that clearly wasn't the case. Aaron Jones should be an upgrade. I like particularly he's always been a little bit on the underrated side as far as receiving contributions. That's really kind of the key production that they're probably looking to replace in the post Dalvin Cook era, as far as offensive philosophy goes. So he should slide right in and be an immediate contributor. I thought they got him for a fair deal. And I think ultimately, that there were not many weaknesses across the skill position groups, but running back was the top of the list, and so Aaron Jones should help upgrade that right away. And Ty Chandler, for what it's worth, is not a bad backup, so I think they're in pretty good shape. Running back room is in pretty good shape there.
Well, that's good to hear for Minnesota hopes. That's good to hear. Here's the slide I have on my top needs, and you can see whether I'm on point here. Obviously, quarterback seems to be a need. Cover cornerback, you have to do something against. You cannot allow 7 out of every 10 completions. And cover cornerback and edge rusher kind of go hand in hand. If you don't get to the quarterback, your cornerbacks have to cover a little bit longer. Minnesota certainly was aggressive in terms of trying to get quarterback and edge. Drew, walk us through what you see from this draft class.
Okay, so the draft process for the Vikings is it involves a little bit of storytelling, and it's a really tough process to grade. I thought that they made an early move to get a second first round pick from the Texans, if you remember. Yeah, and right. When they did that, when they made that move, it was a little of a head scratcher. Like, okay, I'm not sure why they needed that, but okay, you're giving away future assets. I guess it's to go get your quarterback. But then they were very patient in the process, the draft process itself, and not kind of overpaying to move up to get QB4, or actually ended up being QB5 in this draft in JJ McCarthy. And so, when they initially got the Texans pick, I'm like, oh man, they better not do something stupid like package these up to go move up to number 4 to take McCarthy, right? Like they could probably they have enough assets, I think, to block anyone below them from coming ahead of them. Like they can just wait this out and be patient. And that's ultimately what they did. And so I was like, yes, good job. Good on you guys. Like, well done. And then they fired a lot of draft capital to move up to get Dallas Turner, who's a defensive player. And I mean, he might ultimately be a huge difference maker in this defense. They desperately needed pass rush help in the absence of, after seeing, the Davenport not work out and Danielle Hunter, leave and exit in free agency. Like they needed to address that. And they got who might be the best talent pass rusher in the draft, maybe at 17. That felt like a steal for him in particular, as he was projected in like the top 8. But I didn't know that I loved how much they gave up to go get him, right. And the ultimate price of between the two trades and what they gave up basically quarterback level compensation, draft compensation, trade compensation for a defensive edge rusher, which is kind of a no-no. So mixed feelings about the way they handled the process overall, and it gave them no swings after that in rounds 2 or 3, as their next pick wasn't until 108, and they took a DB who, yeah, I mean, he's pretty clearly going to need time to develop into a starter if he ever gets there. And so they don't have any answers really in the cornerback space, and they are going to be relying on getting early pressure often and or, you know, just preventing the home run play. And so the issues you're pointing out about the success rate that quarterbacks had against this defense is, I would expect it to continue. I don't think there's any real reason that you're going to see a huge jump in the coverage ability of this group. And that's the price you pay when you give away all that capital to go get an edge. And so there were parts of the process that I would stand up and applaud, and there were parts of the process that I really didn't understand. And that's kind of been the way it's been under Kwesi from day one. Right? Like some of the stuff he does, you're just like, guy gets it. That plus EV managing right there. That guy's got the vision. And then some of the stuff you're just like, huh? Okay. All right. Not sure I really understand that. So interesting kind of mixed bag of signal out of that front office. I will say that they have their quarterback. I mean, they're coaching well figured out, right? Like I believe in Kevin O'Connell. I definitely like his vision and his ability to kind of come up with a good scheme and, you know, you make the most out of his weapons. Brian Flores has obviously overachieved every opportunity he's had as a DC. So I would expect that continues. And yeah, I mean, it's a good organization also, right? Like the Minnesota Vikings take care of their players and the players' families, and they have good trainers and they have good nutritionists, and like a lot of the small around the edges stuff as an organization that they really do thrive. So, you know, I think it's fair to kind of err on the side of this will work when they do stuff that you don't really understand. And so I'm gonna kind of give them the benefit of the doubt on a lot of this. What was did I correctly characterize the draft process in your opinion in terms of some of the moves they made?
You know, I'm kind of with you because I've watched this GM for 3 years, and I study GMs carefully before the draft, not only for handicapping purposes, but you know where I think they're going to fit and what they're going to do. And I was with you. I'm so glad they were patient, because this guy has gone sideways in the drafts, the other 2 drafts, where they end up with about the same draft picks that they started with, but they take 5 draft trades to get there. So it's been crazy, but they did sacrifice an awful lot for Dallas Turner. And they basically got a lot of 5th and 6th rounders after that. And you mentioned Jackson, the DB. He has 13 career starts. I think the most important pick after the first 2 will be kicker, because they missed a few kicks last year. And whether he has the mental fortitude, you never know with kickers, to come into the NFL and make those clutch kicks. But otherwise, they are a team that literally has 3 draft picks next year, a 1st, a 5th, and a 5th.
Jeez.
So quarterback's the most important position in the NFL, and McCarthy, I mean, that's a great team to go with. My thinking, Drew, coming into the draft, that whoever Minnesota took at quarterback had an advantage because they had a more experienced offensive line. They have Justin Jefferson, and other teams don't. So,
no, 100%. In the blind, you could have made I thought that it was fair to assume that whoever Minnesota took, kind of independent, you know, as long as they didn't like completely whiff on their talent evaluation, whoever they took was going to be in the best position to succeed in the short term, because of all those things you said. Like, this offensive line has elite tackle play, right? So you shouldn't really be feeling it off the edge. You should have, you know, the speed of the game should start a little slow for you relative to, say, I don't know, Fields and the Bears, right? Or Young last year for the Panthers. Like, you're in a much better situation from a protection standpoint, and you have like uber elite weapons to throw to. Like, I would listen to an argument that Minnesota has the best skill position group going. I think it's fair.
They're certainly close. Yeah, certainly close.
They're close, if not best. And I'm including a relatively favorable grade on Hawkinson. I'm including a very
Yeah.
impressive number on Jordan Addison. And like Addison, if he was your wide receiver 1, I'm not as excited about. But if he's your wide receiver 2, like that's freaking
Yeah.
awesome. And Justin Jefferson speaks for himself, and you've added Aaron Jones to really fortify your pass catching back. So it's all of the pieces are in place for a quarterback to thrive, even as a young man. And I think JJ McCarthy is ultimately going to get the chance this year. And it's maybe more of a question of when, not if, in terms of starting to see his on the field development.
One more quick point about the draft. Get your opinion.
Sure.
One name not on the draft is Gabriel Murray, and he was my highest rated undrafted player. I had him 9th as edge rusher with about a 4th round grade, and Minnesota took him after the draft. I like that move.
Yeah, UCLA kid, very talented. Surprised he went undrafted, and I think like that's kind of what I was getting at with the head scratching Kwesi stuff.
Yeah,
like these are the guys they swung on as just lotto tickets in the draft and on the defensive
third day
line side.
kind of. Yeah,
Jonathan Grenard. You have depth and just Andrew Van Ginkel. You have depth and you have versatility across some of these guys who you brought in as free agents, and then you did pretty well, I think, drafting and bringing in undrafted free agents like Murphy. And so, like, what was the Dallas Turner thing? Like, is that just a luxury pick? Like, did you feel like you had the luxury? Like, you had the capital to make a luxury pick? Like, I just kind of didn't really square with what they were doing and what they had otherwise. Like, if they had used that same, if they had just stuck where they were, they could have used that capital on a CB 1 or 2, and had more draft capital for the future. So I thought they did a nice job of value in free agency and draft on edge, which made the premium spending on Turner confusing.
Sometimes I wish I was a fly in the wall in some of these rooms to see if GMs actually have a plan, or do they just abort at the last minute because they want to get involved. And I think there's a little of both in the GMs across the NFL, and it's scary to me if you're running an organization. Marrying the schedule that Minnesota faces, which is weird because NFC teams have 9 home games, yet I think Minnesota, I'm double checking my notes here. Minnesota has 3 road games in a row, which is rare for an NFC team with 9 home games. And they have a pretty tough, in my opinion, early schedule, games 2 to 7. And their season win total, however, is pretty low. It's as low as 6.5 at DraftKings, maybe for a reason, because they have some flaws and they're bringing in a rookie quarterback. What's your sense of marrying the schedule versus the season win total 6.5 or 7.5, where it's plus 138 on the overs? Divisional odds are plus 1,000 at DraftKings.
Yeah, the schedule is terrible for them. But it kind of dictates sort of what their decision making is for the quarterback position, I think. And what I mean by that is, you have a very soft opener at the New York Giants. I mean, I know it's on the road, but you're getting New York and Danny Jones potentially, off the knee surgery if he's even ready to go by then, and that's a winnable game, week 1. But then your next stretch of Niners, Texans, Packers, Jets, Lions, Rams, like, yikes, that is a horrific stretch of elite quarterbacks, good to elite quarterbacks, and good skill position groups. The talent you're going to face the wide receiver room for the Niners, the Texans, the Packers, the Jets, the Lions, the Rams, bona fide wide receiver ones, week in, week out. the defense is going to be aggressively tested, and you don't really come up for air until that Colts game. And even then, that's you're probably going to potentially be dogs at home at that point, depending on how the Colts are developing Anthony Richardson. So, the Vikings are going to be lucky to get 2 wins out of their first 8 games, which is a bad place to be. And I think sets up potentially the permission structure to throw in JJ McCarthy in the second half of the season and see how he does. And I look at, the second half, and you're right. You got 3 straight weeks of travel: Jags, Titans, Bears. And that's coming off of a trip to the West Coast to play the Rams before you play the Colts at home. So 4 road games in 5 weeks, including to the West, to the Southeast, and then to the cold on November 24th in Chicago. So none of those are favorable spots. The schedule doesn't get truly favorable until December for you, where you get Cardinals, Falcons, Bears at home, at Seahawks, Packers at home, Lions on the road. You could potentially put winning football together from week 13 to week 18. But at that point, you're starting JJ McCarthy, and you're just hoping that, that the cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul haven't, have it spoiled on your process to the point where people are under pressure to get fired. Because, I think it's going to require patience. Obviously, you just drafted a rookie quarterback. The idea of him showing out immediately, I think, is asking a lot. And if he's ready to go week 1, you play him, sure, but he's going to take some lumps. And I guess I look at the defenses that they're facing: Giants, Niners, Texans, Packers, Jets, Lions. The Jets are gnarly, but there's some softer defenses in that stretch. And really, overall, the defenses that you face, the coverage units, the pass rushes, are not scary enough that I wouldn't be dissuaded from starting McCarthy early and just kind of letting him learn on the job. And if that includes, as long as he can kind of keep his head up in the face of losing, then I think you're okay, because this team's going to give up a lot of points based on the quarterbacks you're playing and the sequencing. So I think the win total approach I would take is literally just do nothing, let them accrue losses over the early portion of the season, and then keep an eye open for when they reopen win totals in season, and see if you can kind of buy low on them when people have given up on them, because this is the kind of team that could start cold and finish hot.
You're reading my mind or something here. I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking in terms of, if you like Minnesota and you like their offensive structure and stuff, then the quarterbacks need time. Why not wait? And I think you hit it right on the head. There's no rush if you like Minnesota.
No rush. Yeah. And you got some games in the months of December and January that are all indoors. Your only outdoor game is at Seattle. They don't have especially cold weather up there, but it could be raining and messy. Who knows? But still, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of your last 6 games in a dome, and you're leading an aerial attack on defenses who are beat up and tired, that could be a secret for success, scoring points and really starting to blossom of your rookie quarterback. So if I was completely in the blind on this team, but you made me make a bet, I would wait until November 24th comes and they lose at Chicago. And then I would fire on a live win total of 4.5 or something. If they're 2-win team at that point after losing at Chicago, I think you could get a good buy low on them at that point, where they, you're betting on them winning 3 of their last 6 or something like that.
I like that. I think that's right on par with what I would be thinking there. Now, if you dislike Minnesota, then maybe
just fire away on the under now.
Just fire, just go after it, because your best price might be right away, especially if Sam Darnold is starting. You talk about range of outcomes. Range of outcome is he could throw a beautiful pass to either team, so that would be a problem. My final thoughts are very. It's not big compared to some of the other teams I've done, and really focuses on key 3. What's the quarterback play going to look like? Darnold early, maybe, and McCarthy under a learning mode. the rookie place kicker. There's going to be some close games. Does he deliver? And
Mm.
Brian Flores, from what I understand, I know he was blitz happy last year. I don't know. I mean, he's got more tools to work with in the front. Maybe he doesn't have to rush as many people. And I've heard his defenses are complex to learn. Can they fix that pass defense with the current defensive secondary? Those are my keys. What are some of the things you're looking for? What are some of the keys you have for this team?
Yeah, I mean, these thoughts are all, I think, fair. The huge, like, if you don't get immediate, you know, breakout level quality of play out of Dallas Turner, then the point one is answered to the no, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's asking a lot out of a rookie defensive player that's like you said, he's in a defense that takes a long time to learn. Like, that's tough. The weaknesses clearly on this roster are in the secondary. Outside of Harrison Smith, you have a lot of question marks and or guys who we know the answers to, and they're not great. Your CB1 is Byron Murphy Jr., your CB2 is Shaq Griffin, your nickelback is Josh Metellus. There were wasted picks pretty clearly in the secondary in the Quessy regime. You remember Lewis Seen and Andrew Booth Jr. Like, those guys are like way down the depth chart now. Those seem like completely wasted assets. And if any of your frontline guys get hurt in your cornerback room in particular, like, the next man up is like real spooky. So this is a team that the defense is thin to begin with and maybe weak on the backside, and it gets real scary if there's injuries. I think the overvalued in 23, any chance undervalued in 24 is a very fair question as well. They got they were off memory, they were one of the worst teams down the home stretch in terms of covering spreads. I want to say they were 5-1 or 0-4-2 in terms of closing number in the last 6 weeks of the season. I think a ton of that came down to the quarterback play. And Sam Darnold, while I don't think he'll ever be kind of a bona fide starter in the NFL, in a Kevin O'Connell system with Justin Jefferson and with protection, can you do a Kirk Cousins impression? I don't see why not. And so, there's definitely upside. There's definitely, I think, more of a chance that they're undervalued coming into the season than overvalued, surely. And that's just because, when you have that much talent on the offensive side of the ball, you just need a quarterback who's somewhat, can play within the offense. And Kevin O'Connell, with a full offseason of, working together with Sam Darnold, he could very well get there. And so I think, to me, I see correctly lined win total in the 6.5 range with upside. And I'm hopeful that the schedule is tough enough that this is a team that is going to be perceived as a bunch, losing games, while maybe their power number drifts a little bit just because they're losing, but in reality is a good bet to cover on a given week because they're the skill position group gives them an ability to score, and I think looking for an opportunity to get involved with the win total in season is the right look.
Growing pains for sure. I think that might sum it up. There's a lot of potential there, a lot of range of outcomes. We're going to be watching the coaches, the defense, the kicker, the quarterback. There's too many moving parts right now. But Drew, I thank you so much for doing this and for previewing the Minnesota Vikings. I think people got a lot of insight in terms of what we're thinking about, how our minds are rolling with Minnesota in a very tough division.
I guess you do more college than me. Let me ask you just a quick opinion question.
Okay.
JJ McCarthy going to hit?
I think this is the right organization for him. So
Okay.
I think you have to give him time. I think he is going to be, I don't think he's ever going to be a top 5 quarterback. Let's not get our hopes up that much. He's very cerebral. I didn't see him make all the throws I needed to see him make. So he needs a proper tutelage. As long as he's got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as a number 2, yeah, he could work. If you asked me that question and he was drafted to the New York Giants, I would say no. But I think this is a lot of it is person team fit, and it just worked. That's just the way the draft works. You don't always get what you want in terms of you as a player going to the right organization. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
That this will work, but not necessarily early, like you and I kind of alluded to early in 2024.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. If he gets drafted 3rd to the Pats, bust. If he gets drafted 5th, 6th to the Giants, bust. If he goes to the Broncos or the Raiders, I don't know that he necessarily succeeds. But on this team with these weapons, with this protection, it has the chance to work. But yeah, year 1 could be bad. He was in a system where they were leading and running.
Yeah.
Guess what you're not going to be in, in the NFL, a system where you have the lead often and you're running often. Right. Like he's going to have to, he's going to have to operate the offense and make some throws and get them into comeback mode, which, that takes time to be able to do. I think CJ Stroud benefited a ton last year as a rookie from just having positive game state often early. He didn't have a lot of adversity. He was at home a bunch and he was with the lead, and I think that if you're afforded that, you can succeed in year 1, but I don't know that I see that for the Vikings this year in any way.
It's rare. It's definitely rare to do that. And with Minnesota, what you see is what you get. You just paid Justin Jefferson and you got 3 draft picks next year. So work with what you got. That's what you have. Next up for me is the Atlanta Falcons. That'll be coming up shortly, 20 minutes or so. Speaking of GMs that don't have a clue, that's going to be a fun one for me to preview. But Drew, thank you. And thanks for everybody who was watching this one. And I'll see you soon.